My husband's boarding announcement echoed through Terminal C as he disappeared down the jetway with his business partner, leaving me clutching our 6-month-old daughter at the gate. He thought I'd beg him to come back. Instead, I smiled and opened my banking app. Zero balance in his accounts, assets frozen, business dissolved. His empire crumbled at 30,000 feet, while I changed Lily's diaper in the airport bathroom. The fluorescent lights of Chicago O'Hare International Airport buzzed overhead as I stood frozen at Gate B-17, my 6-month-old daughter Lily crying. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. In my arms while my husband Owen disappeared down the jetway with Agatha Morrison, his so-called business development partner. The final boarding call for Flight 447 to Seattle had just concluded, and Owen hadn't looked back once. "Ma'am, are you all right?" A concerned flight attendant approached, her badge reading Colette. The genuine worry in her eyes almost broke my composure. Almost. "Just fine," I replied, shifting Lily to my hip and pulling out my phone. "Better than fine, actually." Through the massive terminal windows, I could see Owen's plane taxiing toward the runway. He was probably settling into his first-class seat, right about now, maybe ordering a celebratory drink with Agatha, thinking he'd successfully orchestrated the perfect escape. What he didn't know was that while he'd been planning his grand exit for months, I'd been planning something far more devastating. Now, as I watched his plane disappear into the gray November sky, I opened my banking app and smiled. Owen's checking. Account, 0.00. His savings, 0.0. His business credit line, frozen. Morrison and Associates operating accounts, transferred to escrow pending legal review. The downtown penthouse he'd been secretly paying for with our money. Lease terminated, belongings boxed and donated. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story doesn't start here in Terminal C, with me holding our daughter while her father abandons us for his business partner. It starts 6 months earlier, with the birth of our daughter and the inheritance that made Owen show his true colors. My name is Simone Rodriguez, and until 8 hours ago, I was married to Owen Matthews, a man I thought I knew. Until this morning, I believed we were building a life together, raising our daughter Lily in the beautiful brownstone my grandmother left me in Lincoln Park. Until I found the boarding passes in his jacket pocket and realized that the man I'd trusted with my heart, my home, and my inheritance had been systematically stealing everything while planning to disappear with another woman. But Owen made one critical mistake. He underestimated the woman he married. You see, my grandmother Elena Rodriguez wasn't just a sweet old lady who baked empanadas and told stories about the old country. She was a shrewd businesswoman who'd built a real estate empire in Chicago, from nothing, starting with a single boarding house for immigrant workers in the 1960s. When she passed last year, she left me everything: 12 commercial properties worth over $4 million, a portfolio of investments, and most importantly, her financial advisor George Brennan, who'd been protecting the Rodriguez family assets for 30 years. "Mija," she'd told me before she died, gripping my hand with surprising strength. "Never let a man control what your family built, not even a good man, especially not a good man who might turn bad." At the time, I'd thought it was just old-fashioned thinking. Owen was different. Owen was supportive, loving, excited about building something together. When Lily was born 6 months ago, he'd cried holding her, whispering promises about the life we'd give her. What I didn't realize was that Owen had been calculating that life down to the last dollar of my inheritance. 6 months earlier, Lincoln Park, Chicago, the brownstone at 1847 North Cleveland Avenue had been in the Rodriguez family for 43 years. 3 stories of red brick and ivy, with bay windows that caught the morning light, and a small garden where my grandmother Elena had grown tomatoes and herbs until she was 87. Now it was mine, along with everything else she'd built. Remember the day Lily was born, how Owen had cried holding her in the hospital room. his hands shaking as he traced her tiny fingers. "She's perfect," he'd whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Absolutely perfect. Just like her mother." In that moment, surrounded by the chaos of new parenthood, exhausted but euphoric, I thought we had everything. Love, health, a beautiful home, and now this incredible little person who would complete our family. Owen had been my rock throughout the pregnancy, driving me to every appointment, assembling the crib with meticulous care, reading parenting books with the same intensity he brought to architectural blueprints. "I want to be the kind of father who's present," he'd told me one evening as we painted the nursery a soft lavender. "My dad was always working, always chasing the next promotion. I don't want Lily to remember me that way." The irony of those words would haunt me later. Our life seemed charmed in those early weeks. Owen had just been promoted to regional director at Morrison & Associates, one of Chicago's most prestigious architecture firms. At 32, he was the youngest person ever to hold that position, and the salary bump meant we could finally start planning the future we'd dreamed about. Elena Rodriguez had been a formidable woman. Born in Mexico City, she'd come to Chicago in 1961 with nothing but determination and a fierce work ethic. She'd cleaned offices by night and learned English by day, saving every penny until she could buy a rundown boarding house in Logan Square. She'd renovated it herself, renting rooms to other immigrants who needed a safe place to start their American dreams. One boarding house became 2, then 4, then 12 commercial properties scattered across Chicago's most desirable neighborhoods. By the time she died at 91, she owned prime real estate in Lincoln Park, Wicker Park, the Loop, and River North. The portfolio was worth over $4 million, generating steady rental income that would support my family for generations. "Mija," she'd told me during her final weeks, her papery hand surprisingly strong as it gripped mine, "this money isn't just money. It's freedom. It's security. It's the choice to never depend on anyone who might let you down." At the time, I thought it was old-fashioned wisdom, maybe even a little cynical. I was 28, madly in love with my husband, pregnant with our first child. Owen wasn't some opportunist. He was a successful professional in his own right, ambitious and driven. He didn't need my money, or so I thought. The first weeks after Lily's birth were a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and sleepless nights. Owen was incredibly helpful, taking the night shift so I could recover, bringing me coffee in bed, handling the endless stream of visitors who wanted to meet our daughter. "You're amazing," I told him one morning, watching him expertly swaddle Lily while singing softly in Spanish, something he'd learned from my grandmother. "I couldn't do this without you." "You'll never have to," he replied, kissing my forehead. "We're a team, Simone. Forever." It was during this honeymoon period that George Brennan, my grandmother's longtime financial advisor, came to visit. George was 72, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been managing the Rodriguez family finances for 30 years, and Elena had trusted him completely. "Your grandmother was very specific about her wishes," George explained as we sat in the living room, Lily sleeping peacefully in my arms. "She wanted you to have full control of the inheritance, but she also wanted protections in place." He spread out documents on the coffee table. Trust agreements, property deeds, investment portfolios. The numbers were staggering. I'd known my grandmother was comfortable, but I hadn't realized the true extent of her wealth. $4.2 million in real estate, George continued. Another $800,000 in diversified investments. And the properties generate approximately $45,000 monthly in rental income. Owen whistled low. "That's life-changing money." "It is," George agreed, then looked directly at me. "Which is why your grandmother established specific protocols. The trust remains under Simone's sole control for the first year after inheritance. After that, if she chooses, she can add beneficiaries or co-trustees." "A year?" Owen's tone was carefully neutral, but I caught the slight tension in his voice. "That seems Excessive. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. George smiled diplomatically. Elena was a cautious woman. She'd seen too many family fortunes destroyed by hasty decisions during emotional times. New parenthood, grief over her death, major life changes. She wanted to ensure Simone had time to adjust before making any permanent financial decisions. Looking back, that conversation was the first crack in our foundation. Owen wasn't thinking about protecting what we were building. He was calculating how to access what Elena had already built. Owen had always been the perfect husband, or so I thought. During those precious early weeks with Lily, he transformed into what seemed like the ideal father and partner. While I struggled with postpartum exhaustion and overwhelming responsibility of caring for a newborn, Owen stepped up in ways that made my heart swell with gratitude. "Let me take the 3 a.m. feeding," he'd insist, gently lifting Lily from her bassinet before I was fully awake. "You need your rest, Mama." I'd drift back to sleep to the sound of his soft voice singing lullabies in the nursery, sometimes in Spanish phrases he'd picked up from my grandmother. During those quiet midnight moments, I felt completely secure in our little family bubble. Owen's thoughtfulness extended beyond baby care. He'd surprise me with my favorite coffee from the corner cafe, flowers picked up on his way home from work, or takeout from restaurants I'd been craving. When my friend Felicia came to visit and mentioned how lucky I was to have such an attentive husband, I couldn't help but agree. "Seriously, Simone," Felicia said, watching Owen expertly change Lily's diaper while discussing his latest architectural project. "Most new fathers act like babysitting their own kids is a huge favor. Owen actually seems to enjoy it." "I do enjoy it," Owen said, lifting Lily to his shoulder for burping. "This little girl is going to change the world someday. I can feel it." The way he looked at our daughter in those moments seemed so genuine, so full of love and pride. How could I have known he was already calculating her net worth through my inheritance? Owen's support extended to practical matters too. When endless streams of baby gear and gifts threatened to overwhelm our home, he organized everything with the same meticulous attention he brought to architectural drawings. The nursery became a masterpiece of efficiency and beauty. Every item, carefully placed and purposeful. "You're incredible," I told him one afternoon, watching him assemble a new changing table while Lily napped in her crib. "I don't know how I got so lucky." "We got lucky," he corrected, pausing to kiss my forehead. "And this is just the beginning, Simone. When Lily's older, we'll look back on these days as the foundation of everything we built together." Foundation. He used that word often, and it always made me feel warm and secure. Owen was an architect, after all. He understood the importance of solid foundations, careful planning, structural integrity. I trusted him to help build our family's future with the same care he brought to designing buildings. Looking back, I realize how carefully Owen cultivated that trust. Every gesture, every thoughtful action, every loving word was designed to make me feel dependent on him, grateful to him, willing to give him anything he asked for. The manipulation was subtle, but systematic. When I struggled with breastfeeding, Owen researched lactation consultants and scheduled appointments. When I felt overwhelmed by visitors, he tactfully managed our social calendar, protecting my energy and privacy. When I worried about returning to work at the marketing agency, he suggested I take extended leave. "You don't need to rush back," he said one evening as we watched Lily sleep in her bouncer. "Between my promotion and your grandmother's rental income, we're more than comfortable. Lily needs her mother, especially during these crucial early months." It seemed reasonable, even caring. Owen was thinking about what was best for our daughter, encouraging me to prioritize motherhood over career ambitions. What I didn't realize was that every day I stayed home, every decision I let him handle, every responsibility I gratefully passed off to him was another thread in the web he was weaving around my independence. The financial discussions began innocuously enough. Owen would mention bills that needed paying, insurance policies requiring updates, investment opportunities he'd heard about at work. Since I was barely functioning on 3 hours of sleep per night, I was grateful to have someone else handle the details. I updated our life insurance policies, he announced one morning, showing me documents over breakfast while Lily dozed in my arms. Both of us are covered now, with Lily as the beneficiary, and I added myself as the account contact for easier communication with the insurance company. That makes sense, I mumbled, more focused on whether Lily's breathing sounded normal than on insurance paperwork. I also talked to George about setting up automatic transfers from the rental income account to our checking account. Owen continued. Right now, the money just sits there earning minimal interest. If we're more active about managing it, we could significantly increase our returns. This got my attention. What kind of active management? Owen's face lit up with enthusiasm. Real estate investment trusts, commercial development partnerships, maybe even buying additional properties. My firm has connections with developers all over the Midwest. We could potentially double Elena's portfolio within 5 years. The idea was exciting. My grandmother had been conservative with her investments, focused on stability over growth. But Owen was young, ambitious, connected to the commercial real estate world through his job. Maybe it was time to be more aggressive with the portfolio. Every suggestion was reasonable, every request framed in terms of family benefit, every manipulation disguised as love and protection. Owen was building his foundation too, not for our family's future, but for his own financial security, and I was helping him construct it, one trusting decision at a time. 3 months after Lily's birth, everything changed with a single phone call. I was in the nursery changing her diaper when Owen's voice echoed up the stairs, animated and excited in a way I hadn't heard since his promotion. "Simone, come down here. You need to hear this." I found him in the kitchen, still in his work clothes, holding his phone with a grin that stretched across his entire face. Lily gurgled contentedly in my arms as I waited for him to explain. "That was Marcus Morrison himself," Owen said, eyes bright with possibility. "The senior partner. He wants me to lead the Seattle expansion project." "Seattle again?" I asked, shifting Lily to my hip. "You've been talking about Seattle a lot lately." "Because it's the future, Simone. Morrison and Associates is opening a full branch office there, and they want me to head it up. This isn't just a promotion, it's a partnership track. If I can establish the Seattle office successfully, I'll be made a junior partner within 2 years." The opportunity was undeniably impressive. Morrison and Associates was one of the most prestigious firms in the Midwest, and partnership meant financial security for life. But something about Owen's enthusiasm felt different, more intense than his usual career ambitions. "What would that mean for us?" I asked carefully. "Would we have to move to Seattle?" "Eventually, yes. But not immediately. The transition would be gradual, maybe 6 months of traveling back and forth, setting up operations, establishing client relationships. Then we'd relocate once Lily's a bit older and travel is easier." I tried to imagine our life in Seattle. Leaving Chicago meant leaving everything Elena had built, all the properties that generated our income, the community where I'd grown up. It meant starting over in a city where we knew no one, had no family support, no established roots. "What about my grandmother's properties?" I asked. "The rental income is what allows me to stay home with Lily. If we're living in Seattle—" "That's actually perfect timing," Owen interrupted, excitement building. "This promotion comes with a significant salary increase plus partnership potential. We wouldn't need the rental income anymore. We could sell the properties and invest the proceeds in something more liquid, more growth-oriented. Sell Elena's properties." The words hit me like a physical blow. Those buildings weren't just investments. They were my grandmother's legacy, the physical manifestation of everything she'd worked for. the foundation of security she'd built for future generations. Owen, I can't sell my grandmother's properties. They've been in our family for decades. His expression softened, and he moved closer, taking my free hand in both of his. I understand your emotional attachment. I really do. But Elena was a businesswoman first. She'd want us to make the smartest financial decisions for Lily's future. The properties are already making smart financial decisions. $45,000 a month in passive income, that's more than most people's entire salaries. Passive income. That requires constant management, Owen countered. Property maintenance, tenant issues, market fluctuations, tax complications. In Seattle, we could put that $4 million into commercial development partnerships that generate twice the returns with half the hassle. I looked down at Lily, who was studying my face with those serious blue eyes that reminded me so much of Elena. What would my grandmother want? Security and stability, or growth and opportunity? We don't have to decide anything right now, Owen continued, sensing my hesitation. The Seattle opportunity is still in the planning stages. But I want you to start thinking about it, maybe. Research some investment options so we're prepared when the time comes. Over the following weeks, Owen threw himself into the Seattle project with intensity that bordered on obsession. He worked late every night, took calls at all hours, and filled our dining room table with blueprints, market research, and development proposals. When I complained about feeling like a single parent, he assured me it was temporary. This is our chance, Simone. Not just mine, ours, Lily's. If I can make partner, we'll have generational wealth, real security. But we already had real security. Elena had made sure of that. What Owen was chasing wasn't security. It was status, prestige, the kind of wealth that came with recognition and power rather than careful accumulation and wise management. The first red flag should have been how quickly Owen's focus shifted from our family's needs to the Seattle opportunity. Suddenly, every conversation centered around market projections, partnership timelines, and the incredible potential of Pacific Northwest development. The second red flag was his growing impatience with my questions and concerns. When I asked about the logistics of managing a Chicago-based property portfolio from Seattle, he dismissed my worries as small thinking. When I mentioned missing our family and friends, he suggested we were being emotionally limited rather than strategically minded. But the biggest red flag was the arrival of Agatha Morrison. She's Marcus Morrison's niece, Owen explained when he first mentioned her over dinner. Harvard MBA, 3 years at Goldman Sachs, specialized in real estate investment banking. Marcus brought her in specifically for the Seattle expansion. Morrison's niece? I raised an eyebrow. That seems convenient. She earned her position, Owen said quickly. Agatha's credentials are impeccable. Plus, she has existing relationships with Seattle developers and investors. She's exactly what we need to make this project successful. The way he said, "She's exactly what we need," made something twist in my stomach. Not the firm needs or the project needs. We need. When Owen began staying late for strategy sessions with Agatha, I tried to push down my growing unease. When he started mentioning her insights and recommendations in every conversation, I reminded myself that building a new office required collaboration. When he began taking weekend calls from her while Lily and I waited for family time, I told myself I was being unreasonably jealous. Agatha thinks we should start with mixed-use developments, Owen said one Saturday morning, pacing our kitchen, while talking on speakerphone. The Seattle market is perfect for live workspaces, especially in the tech corridors. I listened to Agatha's voice coming through the phone, confident, articulate, full of ideas and energy. She sounded like the kind of woman who got things done, who made things happen, who knew exactly what she wanted and how to get it. That sounds promising, I said when the call ended, trying to keep my tone neutral. She's brilliant, Owen replied, his admiration obvious. Agatha sees opportunities that most people miss. Working with her is going to be incredible. Incredible. Not challenging, not productive, not successful. Incredible. The word choice felt intimate, personal, charged with an energy that had nothing to do with business development. That's when George Brennan called with concerning news. "I've been reviewing the quarterly reports," George said during our monthly check-in. "Owen has been asking a lot of questions about liquidity options for the real estate portfolio." "He mentioned some investment opportunities in Seattle," I said, carefully. "But we haven't made any decisions." He specifically asked about selling timelines, tax implications for large asset sales, and procedures for transferring property holdings to out-of-state investment vehicles. My stomach dropped. Owen wasn't just casually researching investment options, he was actively planning to liquidate Elena's properties. That night, as Owen slept beside me, I lay awake thinking about Elena's warning. Never let a man control what your family built. Not even a good man. Especially not a good man who might turn bad. Was Owen turning bad, or had I just been too trusting to see his true nature from the beginning? Either way, I was starting to understand that the Seattle opportunity wasn't about our family's future. It was about Owen's escape plan. And somehow, Agatha Morrison was the key to everything. 4 months into motherhood, I was drowning. Not literally, but in the relentless exhaustion that comes with caring for a baby who seemed determined to sleep only in 20-minute intervals. Lily was going through what the pediatrician cheerfully called a developmental leap, which apparently meant she would cry for hours, refuse to nap, and turn every feeding into a battle of wills. "Maybe we should hire a night nanny," Owen suggested one morning after I'd spent the previous night walking the halls with a screaming Lily. "Just temporarily, until she settles into a better routine." I bristled at the suggestion. "I can handle it. She's my daughter." "She's our daughter," Owen corrected gently. "And you're exhausted, Simone. You haven't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch in weeks. That's not sustainable." He wasn't wrong. I'd fallen asleep standing up while brushing my teeth the night before. I'd put the milk in the pantry and the cereal in the refrigerator. I'd called my friend Felicia 3 times in one day, forgetting about each previous conversation. A night. "Nanny feels like giving up," I admitted, bouncing Lily as she fussed in my arms. "It's not giving up. It's accepting help so you can be the best mother possible during the day." Owen's reasoning was sound, his concern genuine. But something about outsourcing Lily's care felt like a failure of maternal instinct. Elena had raised my mother without help, working multiple jobs and managing properties. Surely I could handle one baby. "Let me think about it," I said, though we both knew I'd already decided against it. The sleep deprivation made everything harder. Simple decisions became overwhelming. When Lily's pediatrician recommended switching formulas to help with her digestive issues, I stood in the baby aisle at Target for 30 minutes, paralyzed by the dozens of options. When Owen found me there, still holding the same 2 cans and crying quietly, he gently took over. "Why don't I handle the shopping from now on?" he suggested. "You've got enough on your plate." It seemed reasonable. Owen was organized, efficient, good at research. If he could take grocery shopping off my overwhelming list of responsibilities, maybe I could focus on the more important things, like figuring out why Lily cried every time. I put her down. Gradually, Owen began handling more of our household management. He scheduled repair appointments for the house, coordinated with tenants who had maintenance requests, and managed our increasingly complex insurance policies. When I tried to stay involved, he'd point out how tired I looked, how much I already had to worry about. "Let me take care of the boring stuff," he'd say. "You focus on taking care of yourself and Lily." The financial decisions became part of this pattern. When our financial advisor George called about quarterly investment reviews, Owen offered to handle the meeting. When tax season arrived, he took all the documents to our accountant. When the property management company needed signatures for new leases, Owen would bring the papers to me while I was feeding Lily, explaining the basics while I tried to pay attention through my exhaustion. "These are just routine renewals," he'd say, pointing to signature lines while Lily latched and unlatched repeatedly. "Same terms as last year, adjusted for inflation." I'd sign gratefully, relieved that someone else was handling the details I felt too overwhelmed to process properly. Looking back, I realize how perfectly Owen orchestrated this period. He wasn't just helping. He was systematically taking control while making me feel grateful for his assistance. Every task he assumed, every decision he handled, every responsibility he lifted from my shoulders was another thread in the web of dependency he was weaving around me. The Seattle opportunity became his constant focus during this time. While I struggled with the basics of daily survival, Owen was energized by the possibilities of our future. He'd come home from his strategy sessions with Agatha full of excitement about market projections and development timelines. "The tech boom in Seattle is creating incredible opportunities," he'd tell me over dinner while I tried to eat one-handed with Lily on my lap. "Amazon's expansion alone is driving commercial development unlike anything we've seen." I'd nod and make appropriate sounds of interest, but honestly, I was more concerned with whether Lily's latest crying spell indicated an ear infection or just another growth spurt. The abstract concept of Seattle real estate opportunities felt as distant as Mars, when I could barely keep track of which day of the week it was. "Agatha thinks we could potentially triple our investment returns within the first 2 years," Owen continued. "The Seattle market is so undervalued compared to its growth potential, Agatha thinks." Owen mentioned her opinions constantly now, as if her insights were gospel. When I asked about his own analysis of these opportunities, he'd defer to her expertise. "She's been studying Pacific Northwest markets for years," he'd explain. "Her Harvard connections have given her access to proprietary research that most investors never see." I began to resent the mysterious Agatha and her Harvard connections. While I was barely functioning on 3 hours of sleep, she was apparently revolutionizing real estate investment strategy. While I struggled to shower regularly, she was making brilliant strategic decisions that would determine our family's future. "Maybe I should meet her," I suggested one evening after Owen spent an hour enthusiastically describing Agatha's latest market analysis. Owen paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. "Meet her? Your business partner. The woman who's going to help us triple our investments. It seems like I should know her, don't you think?" "Of course," Owen agreed quickly. "Absolutely. It's just that her schedule is crazy right now with the Seattle project ramping up. But definitely, when things calm down, a bit. When things calm down." It was Owen's standard response to any request that might complicate his carefully managed narrative. When would we visit my childhood friends? When things calm down. When would we plan a weekend trip to see his parents? When things calm down. When would I have time to review the investment documents myself instead of just signing them? When things calm down. But things weren't calming down. They were getting more complicated. Lily's sleep issues worsened. Our house needed major repairs that required constant contractor coordination. The property management company needed frequent decisions about maintenance and tenant issues. I was drowning in responsibilities while simultaneously being excluded from the decisions that would shape our future. "I'm worried about you," Felicia said during one of her visits, watching me struggle to hold a conversation while bouncing a fussy Lily. "You look exhausted. Are you getting any help?" "Owen helps," I said automatically. "I mean professional help. A babysitter, a cleaning service, something to give you a break." The suggestion made me defensive. "I don't need a break. I need Lily to sleep through the night." "Simone, you're a great mother, but you're also a human being. You can't pour from an empty cup." Felicia's concern was valid, but accepting help felt like admitting failure. Elena had managed everything on her own: children, business, finances. If I couldn't handle one baby and some rental properties, what did that say about my strength and capability? That night, as I lay awake listening to Lily's breathing in the bassinet beside our bed, I tried to understand why I felt like I was disappearing. Maybe it was the sleep deprivation talking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that every decision Owen made on my behalf, every responsibility he assumed, every task he took over was making me smaller somehow. When had I become someone who couldn't handle grocery shopping? When had I stopped being involved in my own financial decisions? When had my opinions about our future become irrelevant compared to Agatha's market analysis? I was too exhausted to pursue these questions that night, but they planted a seed of unease that would eventually grow into something much more dangerous to Owen's carefully constructed plans. Doubt. The decision that would ultimately destroy my marriage came wrapped in love and gratitude. It was Lily's first Christmas, and despite the chaos of new parenthood, I felt blessed. Our daughter was finally sleeping through the night. Owen seemed more attentive than he'd been in months, and the warmth of the holiday season made our Lincoln Park brownstone feel like the sanctuary Elena had always intended it to be. "I have something for you," I told Owen on Christmas morning, after we'd watched Lily destroy more wrapping paper than any 6-month-old should reasonably encounter. Something important. Owen looked up from where he was assembling a complicated baby toy, his hair disheveled and his smile genuine. "More important than this engineering marvel?" he joked, holding up what appeared to be a musical elephant with 17 different buttons. "Much more important." I handed him an envelope, my heart racing with nervous excitement. Inside were documents I'd spent weeks preparing with Will Patterson, Elena's attorney. Documents that would change everything between us. Owen opened the envelope carefully, his expression shifting from curiosity to confusion, to something I couldn't quite read as he scanned the legal papers. "Simone," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is co-ownership of the trust," I finished. "For him. Full partnership in Elena's properties. Equal decision-making power over all investments and asset management." The papers made Owen a 50% owner of everything Elena had built. $4 million in real estate, investment portfolios, rental income, all of it now legally his as much as mine. "But the 1-year waiting period," Owen said, still staring at the documents. "George said Elena wanted you to wait before making any major changes." "She wanted me to wait until I was thinking clearly," I replied, moving to sit beside him on the floor among the scattered Christmas wrapping. "And I am thinking clearly. Clearly enough to know that you're my partner in everything, Owen. Lily's father, my husband, the person I trust most in the world." Owen's eyes filled with tears as he pulled me into his arms. "Simone, this is incredible. You don't know what this means to me." Actually, I thought I did know. It meant that Owen would finally feel like a full partner in our family's financial future. It meant he could stop feeling excluded from major decisions, stop resenting Elena's protective restrictions, stop questioning whether I truly trusted him with our most important assets. What I didn't know was that Owen had been planning this moment for months. "I wanted to show you how much I appreciate everything you've done," I continued, settling into his embrace while Lily babbled happily in her bouncer. "These past 6 months, taking care of us, handling all the business details, supporting my decision to stay home with Lily. You've been amazing." "You've been amazing," Owen countered, kissing the top of my head. "Being Lily's mother, managing the properties, staying strong through everything. I just wanted to help carry the load. Now you can do more than help. Now you can lead." The word seemed to energize Owen in a way I hadn't expected. His grip on me tightened, and when he spoke again, his voice carried an intensity that made something flutter in my chest. "We're going to do incredible things together, Simone. Build something even bigger than what Elena created. Legacy wealth that will set Lily up for generations. That's what I want too, I said, though something about his enthusiasm felt different from the quiet gratitude I'd anticipated. We spent the rest of Christmas Day making plans. Owen spread out charts and projections on our dining room table, showing me investment opportunities he'd been researching, development projects that could multiply our returns, strategies for expanding beyond Elena's conservative approach, the WIKE. Seattle expansion is perfectly timed, Owen said, his excitement building as he outlined his vision. With Agatha's connections and our combined resources, we could establish Morrison & Associates as the premier Pacific Northwest firm, while simultaneously building our own development portfolio. Our combined resources. The phrase should have thrilled me. Owen was talking about true partnership, shared vision, mutual success. Instead, something about the way he said it made me uncomfortable. What does Agatha think about us investing? In her Seattle projects? I asked carefully. Owen's expression flickered, just for a moment, before he smiled. She's excited about the possibilities. Having capital partners who understand the architectural side gives us huge advantages over traditional developers. Capital partners. Not family friends, not Owen's wife and baby daughter, but capital partners. The business language felt cold, transactional, like Owen was already thinking about our relationship in terms of financial utility, rather than love and commitment. When do we meet her? I asked. I'd like to understand these opportunities better, before we commit significant funds. Soon, Owen promised. She's been traveling constantly, setting up meetings with Seattle investors, but definitely soon. You're going to love her. The holidays passed in a blur of family visits and baby milestones. Owen was attentive and affectionate, more present than he'd been since before Lily's birth. He cooked elaborate meals, organized family photo sessions, and even suggested we take a romantic weekend trip once Lily was old enough to stay with his parents. This feels like a new beginning, I told him one evening as we watched our daughter discover her feet for the first time. It is a new beginning, Owen agreed. The beginning of everything we've dreamed about. But while Owen seemed energized by our new partnership, I found myself feeling increasingly uneasy about the speed at which he wanted to move. Every conversation became about Seattle opportunities, Agatha's insights, the incredible potential returns we could achieve if we acted quickly. The development timeline is accelerated, Owen explained one morning over breakfast, showing me yet another spreadsheet of projections. If we want to be part of the initial phase, we need to commit funds within the next 60 days. 60 days? I nearly choked on my coffee. Owen, that's incredibly fast for such a major investment. That's how these opportunities work, Simone. The best deals go to the investors who can move quickly. If we hesitate, we'll lose our position to someone with more flexibility. The pressure felt overwhelming. 1 week earlier, I'd been focused on getting Lily to eat solid foods and wondering if I'd ever sleep 8 hours straight again. Now, Owen was asking me to commit millions of dollars to investments I barely understood in a city I'd never visited. Maybe we should start smaller, I suggested. Test the waters with a few $100,000 before committing everything. Owen's face darkened slightly. A few $100,000 won't get us meaningful returns, Simone. These development projects require substantial capital investments to achieve the economies of scale that make them profitable. But if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong, Owen interrupted, his tone sharper than I'd heard in months. Agatha has done the research. The Seattle market is exploding. Amazon alone is adding 50,000 jobs over the next 3 years. The demand for commercial and residential development is unprecedented. I wanted to trust Owen's confidence, to share his excitement about our financial future. But Elena's voice seemed to whisper in my ear, "Never let a man control what your family built." Had I just given Owen control? The legal documents made us equal partners, but Owen clearly had more knowledge, more connections, more vision for how to use our resources. In practical terms, he would be making the decisions while I struggled to keep up with the complexity of his plans. "I think we should have George review any major investments," I said finally. Elena trusted his judgment and I'd feel more comfortable with his input. Owen nodded, but I caught a flash of irritation in his eyes. Of course, though George's conservative approach might not be suited for these types of growth opportunities. His expertise is in preservation and stability, not aggressive wealth building. Over the following weeks, Owen began pushing harder for quick decisions. Every day brought new urgency, limited time offers, exclusive opportunities, other investors, trying to crowd into the same deals. The pressure was constant, subtle, but persistent. The irony was devastating. I'd given Owen control of Elena's legacy in the name of love and partnership. But love that required surrendering your judgment wasn't partnership. It was surrender, and I was about to meet the woman who would help Owen complete his conquest. The transformation began with small details that seemed insignificant at first. A week after giving Owen co-ownership of Elena's trust, I noticed he'd completely renovated his home office without mentioning it. What had been a modest workspace with a simple desk was now a command center, dual monitors, professional lighting, architectural blueprints covering every wall. "Impressive setup," I said, standing in the doorway with Lily balanced on my hip. Owen looked up from his new leather executive chair, practically glowing with pride. "Morrison approved a full home office budget for the Seattle project, since I'll be managing remote operations. They wanted me properly equipped for client video calls." The equipment was undeniably professional, but something felt wrong about the secrecy. This wasn't just a workspace upgrade, it was a power statement. Elena had managed a multi-million-dollar empire from a simple wooden desk in her bedroom. This setup suggested very different priorities. "When did all this arrive?" I asked, noting the expensive furniture and technology. "Over the past few days. The installation crew finished yesterday while you were at Lily's doctor appointment." Yesterday. Owen had orchestrated this entire transformation while I was out, scheduling it when I wouldn't be home to ask questions or offer input. It was a small thing, but it established a pattern I was beginning to recognize. The real warning signs emerged during our monthly dinner with Felicia and Corey. Owen had been canceling these gatherings frequently, claiming urgent Seattle business. But tonight he seemed eager to share his vision. "Tell us about this Seattle expansion," Corey said over wine, genuinely interested. "Sounds like a major opportunity." Owen's eyes lit up as he launched into his presentation about Pacific Northwest, development potential, Amazon's growth trajectory, and the extraordinary returns available to early investors. His enthusiasm was infectious, his knowledge impressive, his confidence absolute. "And Simone's family trust is backing these investments?" Felicia asked, glancing between us. "We're backing them," Owen corrected smoothly. "As equal partners in all financial decisions." Something about his phrasing bothered me, though I couldn't identify why. Technically, the legal documents made us 50-50 owners. But I'd had virtually no input into the Seattle research or planning. Owen presented opportunities. I approved them. That wasn't partnership. It was delegation. "Have you visited Seattle?" "Yet?" Corey asked me directly. "Not yet," I admitted. "Owen and his colleague Agatha have been handling the market research." "Agatha Morrison," Owen added quickly. "Harvard MBA, Goldman Sachs background, Marcus Morrison's niece. She's leading our investment strategy development." Felicia raised an eyebrow. "Morrison's niece? How convenient." "She earned her position," Owen said, his tone slightly defensive. "Her credentials are impeccable, and she has established relationships with Seattle developers. She's exactly what we need for success." The way he said "exactly what we need" made my stomach tighten. Not "the firm needs" or "the project needs," we need. The language felt personal, intimate, like he was describing a romantic partnership rather than business collaboration. After dinner, while Owen helped Corey load the dishwasher, Felicia cornered me in the living room. "How much do you actually know about these Seattle investments?" she asked quietly. "Enough," I replied, though the word felt hollow. "Owen handles the research and analysis. I review his recommendations and make the final decisions." Felicia studied my face with the expression of someone deciding whether to voice a difficult truth. "It just seems like you're very trusting. $4 million is substantial money to invest based on someone else's research, even your husband's." Her questions stung because they highlighted my own growing unease. When had I become so passive about decisions affecting Lily's financial future? Elena would have visited every property, interviewed every partner, reviewed every contract personally. That night, I called George Brennan. "I'm concerned about the pace of these investments," I admitted quietly. "Everything feels rushed." "Trust your instincts," George replied. Elena's gut saved her from disaster more than once. The dinner with Agatha Morrison was scheduled at Gibson's Steakhouse, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. Owen had made the reservation without consulting me, chosen a venue requiring expensive childcare, and somehow forgotten to mention that Agatha would be bringing 2 other Seattle investors. "I thought this was just the 3 of us," I said, adjusting my dress in the restaurant's mirror while 17-year-old Emma from Owen's office waited with a crying Lily in the car. "It is, mostly," Owen replied, straightening his tie with unusual nervousness. But when Marcus Henley and Victoria Stern heard we were meeting, they wanted to join. They're major players in Seattle commercial development. This could be incredibly valuable. Our meeting had become their networking opportunity. Owen kept using our strategy and our investments, but I was increasingly feeling like a silent partner in my own financial decisions. When we arrived, I immediately understood Owen's enthusiasm for Agatha Morrison. She was stunning. Not just beautiful, but magnetic in that particular way successful, confident women project power. Tall, elegant, with sharp intelligence behind designer glasses and a smile suggesting she held secrets worth knowing. "Simone," she exclaimed, rising gracefully from the table. "I've heard so much about you. Owen talks about his brilliant wife constantly." The compliment should have pleased me, but something in her tone felt patronizing, like she was describing an interesting pet rather than a business partner. Marcus Henley, distinguished and silver-haired, extended his hand with the practiced charm of someone accustomed to handling other people's money. "The famous Elena Rodriguez legacy. Owens shared your grandmother's remarkable story." "Elena built something incredible," I agreed, settling into my chair while Owen helped with my jacket like the perfect gentleman. "I'm trying to honor her vision while exploring new opportunities." "Exactly what we love hearing," interjected Victoria Stern, a sharp-featured woman whose eyes seemed to calculate everything's monetary value. "Too many inherited wealth situations get trapped in outdated strategies. You're smart to evolve." Inherited wealth situations. The clinical phrase made me feel like a case study rather than a person making decisions about my daughter's future. Over appetizers, Agatha outlined Phase 2 of the Seattle expansion. Phase 1, apparently, had been preliminary investments. Owen had already committed us to without my detailed knowledge. Phase 2 required $2.5 million across multiple development projects. Conservative projections showed 22% annual returns, Agatha explained, spreading glossy brochures across the white tablecloth. Realistically, we're looking at 30 to 40% once Amazon's campus expansion's complete. The numbers were seductive, almost unbelievable. But the presentation felt rehearsed, designed to overwhelm rather than inform. "What about risk factors?" I asked, studying marketing materials that resembled luxury vacation brochures more than investment prospectuses. Marcus laughed, not unkindly. "The biggest risk is missing this opportunity. Seattle's growth trajectory is unprecedented. We're getting ground floor access to the next Silicon Valley." "Specific risks, though," I pressed. "Construction delays, market downturns, zoning changes." What protections do investors have? Victoria and Marcus exchanged glances that made me feel like I'd asked about emergency exits during a romantic dinner. Owen's expression remained carefully neutral, but I caught embarrassment flickering in his eyes. Those are exactly the right questions, Agatha said smoothly. Owen mentioned your detail-oriented approach. We have comprehensive risk analysis available, though most investors prefer focusing on upside potential rather than unlikely worst-case scenarios. Most investors. I was being positioned as an exception, someone overthinking rather than embracing opportunity. When Owen excused himself for a supposedly urgent call from Morrison's senior partner, Agatha leaned forward with conspiratorial intimacy. "Can I be honest? Woman to woman?" she said, lowering her voice. "Owen's incredibly talented, but Chicago's market limitations have been frustrating him. This Seattle expansion isn't just business. It's his chance to build something truly significant." The implication was clear. My financial caution would prevent Owen from achieving his potential. Of course I want to support Owen's career, I replied carefully, but I have to consider Lily's security. That's exactly why this is perfect, Victoria interjected. Traditional wealth accumulation won't keep pace with your daughter's generation's needs. When Owen returned, his expression was grim. Development. The Bellevue timelines accelerated. We need additional commitment by Friday. How much additional? I asked. 800,000. In one evening, our Seattle investment had grown from abstract opportunity to concrete demand for over $3 million. That's our entire reserve, I said quietly. It's our entire opportunity, Owen corrected. We can't think small anymore. I was surrounded by successful professionals agreeing that my hesitation was the only obstacle between our family and financial greatness. I need time to think, I said finally. Of course, Agatha agreed, though other investors are ready to fill any available positions. The message was clear. Hesitate and lose everything. The discovery that shattered my world came from the most mundane source, our shared cloud storage account. I was searching for Lily's vaccination records to email to daycare when I noticed a folder labeled Seattle Development that I'd never seen before. Expecting investment documents Owen had promised to share, I opened it instead to find hundreds of photos. Photos of Owen and Agatha at restaurants I'd never heard of, hotel lobbies that looked nothing like business venues, laughing with intimate familiarity that made my chest tighten, Owen helping Agatha from a cab outside an upscale cocktail bar. Owen and Agatha sharing dessert at a candlelit table. Owen's hand possessively on Agatha's lower back as they entered the Four Seasons lobby. The timestamps showed these were taken during Owen's business trip to Seattle 3 weeks earlier. The same trip where he'd called nightly complaining about boring investor meetings and expressing how much he missed Lily and me. I scrolled through image after image, watching my husband's affair unfold in high definition. Owen kissing Agatha's forehead while she laughed at something he'd said. Owen and Agatha clinking champagne glasses with Seattle's skyline sparkling behind them. Owen's wedding ring conspicuously absent in every photograph. The most devastating image was saved for last. Owen and Agatha in what was clearly a hotel room, her arms around his neck, both disheveled and grinning with post-intimacy satisfaction. A selfie Owen had taken while Agatha nuzzled his neck. I sat in stunned silence while Lily played nearby, completely unaware her world had just imploded. My hands shook as I forwarded the photos to my personal email. Then I kept digging, finding evidence that made Owen's betrayal even more calculated and devastating. Text message screenshots revealed conversations between Owen and Agatha dating back months, probably since she joined Morrison and Associates. "Can't wait to get you alone in Seattle," Owen had written. "Simone's becoming suspicious, but she's too exhausted to investigate properly." "Poor little wife," Agatha had replied. "Don't worry, baby. Once we secure her money, we can stop pretending. Her money. Not our money, my money." Elena's 40 years of work was nothing more than a target for Owen and his mistress. The text threads revealed the Seattle investment scheme in horrifying detail. There were no legitimate development opportunities. Every project Owen had enthusiastically presented was fabricated, designed to transfer money from our accounts into offshore entities controlled by Agatha and shell companies. Marcus is nervous about the fake documents, Agatha had texted recently. Maybe we should accelerate the timeline. Give me another month, Owen replied. I can get her to commit the full $4 million if I play this right. She's trusting, but not stupid. Trusting, but not stupid. Owen had been calculating my exact level of naivety, determining how much deception I would accept before questioning anything. I found email chains with shell companies, agreements for non-existent properties, investment contracts with fictional firms. Every document I'd reviewed, every opportunity Owen had presented, every projection Agatha had outlined, all elaborate fraud designed to steal everything Elena had built. But the worst discovery was a document titled Phase 3, Owen's Exit Strategy. Once he'd successfully transferred our assets to accounts he controlled, he and Agatha would relocate to Seattle permanently, leaving me with tax liability and worthless documents. Simone will probably fight initially, Owen had written to someone named Kevin Hart, apparently a lawyer. But she's emotionally fragile since motherhood. Legal pressure should convince her to accept minimal settlement rather than fight prolonged custody battle. Owen wasn't just stealing my money, he planned taking Lily too. The email detailed Owen's documentation of my postpartum struggles, exhaustion, reliance on his help. Every time I'd accepted assistance, every moment I'd let him handle decisions. Because I was tired, Owen had been building evidence of my incompetence as a mother. Document everything, the lawyer advised. Depression, poor judgment, financial irresponsibility. By the time we're finished, she'll be lucky to get supervised visitation. This wasn't just affair or financial fraud. Owen had been systematically destroying my life while making me grateful for his help. I closed the laptop and looked at Lily, babbling happily while playing with her reflection in the mirror. She had no idea her father planned taking her away, to build a new life with another woman using money stolen from her future. My phone buzzed. Working late again. Don't wait up. Love you. Even now, Owen was probably with Agatha, celebrating another successful day of manipulation. But I had something Owen didn't know about. Elena's training. My grandmother hadn't just left money, she'd taught strength, strategic thinking, protection of what mattered most. Owen thought he was playing against an exhausted, trusting wife. He had no idea he was actually playing against Elena Rodriguez's granddaughter. The confrontation happened Tuesday night after putting Lily to sleep. Owen was in his office, speaking quietly about accelerating Bellevue timelines. When I walked in and placed printed screenshots of his texts with Agatha on his desk, his face went white as he realized what he was seeing. I can explain, he said, immediately ending his call mid-sentence. Can you? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Explain having an affair while stealing our daughter's inheritance? Owen stared at the evidence, shoulders sagging. For a moment, I thought he might finally tell the truth. Instead, he looked up with tears forming and delivered words that almost destroyed me completely. You're absolutely right. I've made terrible mistakes, and I'm so sorry, Simone. I love you and Lily more than anything. Please don't give up on us. The performance was masterful. Owen's voice broke with seemingly genuine remorse, hands shaking as he reached for mine. When he cried, the tears appeared completely real. Without evidence of his systematic deception, I might have believed him. The affair with Agatha, he continued, voice barely above a whisper. It was wrong, but it's over. It was never about love. I was stressed about business, overwhelmed by fatherhood, and made the worst decision of my life. And the fake investments? I pressed. Owen's expression shifted to confusion, so convincing I momentarily doubted what I'd seen. Fake investments? Simone, I don't understand. The Seattle developments are legitimate opportunities. I can show you contracts, permits, investor prospectuses. He was lying with such conviction it was almost impressive. Owen pulled up documents on his computer, showing what appeared to be official permits and legal agreements. Without forensic accounting knowledge, distinguishing fabrications would have been impossible. Maybe I've been too aggressive about timelines, he admitted. My excitement about our financial future made me push too hard. But these are real opportunities, Simone. I would never risk Lily's future on anything fraudulent. His performance was so convincing, I started questioning my interpretation of the evidence. Maybe the texts were taken out of context. Maybe offshore. Accounts were legitimate investment vehicles I didn't understand. Maybe postpartum anxiety was making me paranoid. I want us to go to counseling, Owen said, taking my hands. I want to save our marriage, earn back your trust, and build the life we dreamed about. Will you give me that chance? Therapy sessions began the following week with Dr. Patricia Summers, a counselor Owen had researched and selected. In that neutral space with calming beige walls and soft lighting, Owen transformed into the husband I'd fallen in love with, attentive, remorseful, committed to change. I've ended all contact with Agatha, he told Dr. Summers during our second session. I've requested Morrison assign her to different projects so we won't work together. How does that make you feel, Simone? Dr. Summers asked. Relieved, I admitted, but confused about rebuilding trust. Trust rebuilds through consistent actions over time, Dr. Summers explained. Owen, what specific changes are you implementing? Owen had a prepared list. Earlier work arrivals, taking nighttime feedings with Lily, complete transparency about business communications. He even suggested a second honeymoon once Lily could stay with his parents. For 2 weeks, Owen's behavior seemed validating his promises. Present, helpful, affectionate. When Agatha called about business, he took calls on speakerphone so I could hear their professional-only conversations. When Seattle opportunities arose, he presented them with detailed documentation and no pressure for quick decisions. I think we're making real progress, I told Felicia during coffee. Owen seems genuinely committed to changing. That's wonderful, Felicia replied, though something in her tone suggested reservation. How are you feeling about the Seattle investments? More cautious. Owen agreed we should start smaller, test waters with a few $100,000 before committing. Everything. But even speaking these words, something felt wrong. Owen's transformation had been too complete, too perfect. People don't fundamentally change behaviors in 2 weeks, especially when those behaviors involved elaborate deception and planning. My suspicions were confirmed when I discovered Owen had become more careful rather than more honest. He'd switched to encrypted messaging for Agatha communications. He'd started using work computers for sensitive emails instead of our shared home system. He'd improved at hiding tracks, not abandoned plans. The breakthrough came finding a hotel keycard in Owen's gym bag, Palmer House, dated from the previous Saturday, when he'd supposedly been golfing with Morrison colleagues. That's when I realized Owen's remorse was just another manipulation layer. He wasn't trying to save our marriage. He was buying time to complete whatever he and Agatha had started. Therapy wasn't about rebuilding trust. It was managing my suspicions until he could execute his final move. But I'd learned something valuable during those 2 weeks of false hope. I was stronger than Owen realized. The woman overwhelmed by new motherhood and financial complexity was gone, replaced by someone who understood exactly what she was fighting for. Owen thought he was playing the long game, slowly rebuilding my confidence while perfecting his exit strategy. He had no idea I was now playing my own game, one ending with him losing everything he thought he'd already won. The ambush came disguised as celebration. Owen announced it over breakfast Thursday morning, his excitement appearing genuine as he outlined plans for a surprise party commemorating our first year as business partners. I've been working with Morrison's team to organize something special, he said, bouncing Lily on his knee while I processed his words. A celebration of everything we've accomplished together, everything we're building for our family's future. What kind of celebration? I asked carefully. Dinner at the Chicago Club, Owen replied, eyes bright with calculated enthusiasm. Marcus Morrison wants to formally recognize our investment partnership. Agatha's flying in from Seattle specifically for the event. Mentioning Agatha made my stomach tighten, but Owen's tone was casual, innocent. I almost wondered if I'd imagined their affair. When is this dinner? Saturday night. Short notice, but Marcus just confirmed availability. Perfect timing. We can announce the final phase of our Seattle expansion in front of people who matter most to our future. Final phase. The phrase sent chills through me, but Owen's smile was so warm, loving, that any observer would see a devoted husband planning something special for his wife. Over the next 2 days, Owen threw himself into party preparations with intensity that should have warned me something was wrong. He arranged childcare with his parents, made reservations at one of Chicago's most exclusive private clubs, and personally called investors and colleagues to ensure maximum attendance. This is going to be incredible, he told me Friday night. Reviewing guest lists. Simone, tomorrow night is going to change everything for our family. He wasn't wrong. Saturday evening arrived with early spring warmth that felt like a good omen. I dressed carefully in a navy cocktail dress Elena had always said brought out my eyes, wearing her pearl earrings for confidence. Owen looked handsome in his dark suit, every inch the successful architect and devoted husband. The Chicago Club's dining room was elegant and intimate, with soft lighting and tasteful arrangements. About 20 people gathered, Morrison colleagues, several investors from previous meetings, and couples Owen described as important Seattle connections. Agatha looked stunning as always, in a black dress managing to be both professional and alluring. She greeted me with air kisses and compliments, playing friendly business partner with Oscar-worthy skill. Simone, you look radiant, she said, smile perfectly calibrated. Owens told me so much about your vision for the family's financial future. Tonight really celebrates your leadership. My leadership. From the woman systematically stealing my inheritance, the phrase felt like mockery disguised as praise. Marcus. Morrison stood making the first toast, raising champagne with the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, we're here celebrating an extraordinary partnership. Simone Rodriguez-Matthews has shown remarkable vision supporting our Seattle expansion, and Owen Matthews has demonstrated architectural brilliance that will make this venture legendary. Polite applause filled the room as Marcus outlined our investment scope, projected returns, and bright future awaiting everyone present. His words painted shared success and mutual prosperity that would have been inspiring if I hadn't known it was built on lies. Then Owen stood to speak, and I felt the atmosphere shift subtly. His expression was serious, almost somber, as he looked around the table at assembled guests. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began. This celebration means everything to me, not just professionally, but personally. Simone and I have been through so much this past year. New parenthood, major financial decisions, challenges of building something bigger than ourselves. He paused, eyes finding mine across the table. For a moment, his expression seemed genuinely emotional, and I felt hope flicker that maybe this evening would bring us closer rather than further apart. Then Owen smiled, and I saw something cold and calculated behind his eyes. Which is why I'm excited to share our news, he continued. Simone and I have decided to make major changes in our lives, changes that will allow us to fully embrace opportunities ahead of us. The room fell silent, everyone waiting. I felt my chest tighten with anticipation and dread. Effective immediately, I'll be relocating to Seattle to oversee Morrison & Associates' Pacific Northwest expansion. And I'm thrilled to announce that Agatha Morrison will be joining me as business partner in a new venture, combining architectural design with commercial development. Surprised gasps and excited applause rippled through the room. Several people began clapping, clearly impressed by what sounded like major career advancement. But I was still processing his words, trying to understand why he was announcing a Seattle move without discussing it with me first. That's when Owen dropped the bomb, destroying everything. Of course, this transition means Simone and I will be ending our marriage, he said, voice steady and matter-of-fact. We've realized we want different things for our futures, and we're committed to making this change as amicable as possible for everyone involved, especially our daughter Lily. The room erupted in shocked whispers and uncomfortable glances. I sat frozen, staring at Owen as he calmly announced our marriage's end to a room full of near strangers, business associates, and investors profiting from my family's money. Simone has been incredibly gracious about restructuring our business partnership, Owen continued, as if discussing routine corporate reorganization rather than our family's destruction. She's agreed to transfer her interest in the Seattle developments to ensure continuity for all our investors. Transfer my interests. The phrase hit like a physical blow. Owen was announcing I'd agreed to things I'd never agreed to, in front of people who would now expect those agreements honored. I tried to speak, to correct the record, to explain I hadn't agreed to any of this. But my voice was trapped, my mind struggling to process Owen's public betrayal. As the room buzzed with awkward congratulations and nervous laughter, I realized what Owen had done. He'd turned our celebration into my humiliation, using witnesses to lock me into agreements I'd never made, creating public pressure to accept decisions I'd never approved. And he'd done it all while making it appear I was a willing participant in my own destruction. The morning after Owen's public humiliation, I sat in my kitchen staring at my laptop while Lily played in her high chair, completely unaware her father had just announced his intention to abandon us both. My hands shook as I logged into our bank accounts, dreading what I might discover. Two numbers were worse than I'd imagined. $3 million had been transferred from our joint investment account in the past month, moved to something called Pacific Northwest Development LLC, a company I'd never heard of, and certainly never authorized. But that was just the beginning. As I dug deeper into financial records, I discovered deception so intricate and systematic it took my breath away. Owen hadn't just been stealing money. He'd been methodically dismantling everything Elena had, built piece by piece, transfer by transfer. The property management company had been switched to a firm owned by Agatha's cousin. Rental income that should have been depositing into our accounts was being diverted to offshore entities in the Cayman Islands. Insurance policies had been changed to list Owen as primary beneficiary, with Lily and me removed entirely. Most devastating was discovering Elena's properties themselves were being quietly sold. 3 of the 12 buildings had already changed hands, with proceeds disappearing into investment accounts I couldn't access. The buyers were shell companies with addresses leading to empty office buildings and disconnected phone numbers. Called George Brennan immediately, voice barely steady as I explained what I'd discovered. "How much has he taken?" George asked, tone grim. "Over $4 million so far," I said, scrolling through transfer after transfer. "But George, he's not just stealing money. He's stealing the properties themselves. Elena's life work is being sold to fake companies." "We need to act immediately," George said. "Every hour we delay gives him more opportunity to hide assets. Can you get to my office this morning?" 20 minutes later, I was sitting in George's downtown office with Lily on my lap, watching him review financial documents with surgical intensity. What he found made me physically sick. "This is sophisticated financial fraud," George said finally, removing his reading glasses. "Owen's been planning this for at least 18 months, probably longer. The timing aligns with when you first told him about your inheritance." 18 months? The timeline hit like a physical blow. That means he started planning before Lily was even born. The pregnancy probably accelerated his timeline, George continued, voice gentle but clinical. New mothers are vulnerable, exhausted, more likely to delegate financial decisions. He used your condition against you. I thought about all the times Owen had insisted on handling financial matters while I recovered from childbirth, how grateful I'd been for his help, how he'd positioned assistance as love and partnership rather than manipulation. There's more, George said, pulling up documents on his computer. Owen's not working alone. This operation involves at least 6 other people, lawyers, accountants, property developers, all coordinating to strip your assets systematically. He showed me a flowchart mapping connections between shell companies, offshore accounts, and fake investment opportunities. At the center were Owen and Agatha, orchestrating a conspiracy that had been robbing my family for over a year. Morrison and Associates is involved too, George continued. Not the firm itself, but Marcus Morrison, personally. He's been providing legitimacy to the operation, using his reputation to make investment opportunities seem credible. What about the Seattle expansion? I asked. Is any of it real? There is no Seattle expansion, George said bluntly. Morrison and Associates has no plans to open a Pacific Northwest office. The entire story was fabricated to justify moving large amounts of money out of your accounts. The scope of deception was staggering. Every business trip Owen had taken, every investment opportunity he'd presented, every strategic meeting he'd attended, all theater designed to steal everything my grandmother had worked 40 years to build. The boarding passes I found in Owen's jacket, I said suddenly. He's really planning to leave today, isn't he? George nodded grimly. Based on financial activity, I'd say he's planning to disappear within the next 24 to 48 hours. Once he's out of the country, recovering assets becomes exponentially more difficult. What can we do? Will Patterson is already preparing emergency injunctions to freeze all accounts and prevent additional transfers, George said. But Simone, there's something else you need to know. He pulled up another document, bearing a Chicago family law firm's letterhead. Owen filed divorce papers yesterday afternoon, immediately after the dinner party. He's asking for full custody of Lily, claiming you're mentally unstable and financially irresponsible. The words hit like a physical blow. Owen wasn't just stealing my money. He was trying to take my daughter too. He's been documenting everything, George continued. Your postpartum struggles, times when you've relied on his help with daily tasks, decisions you've delegated because of exhaustion. He's built a case that you're unfit to be Lily's primary caregiver. I looked down at my daughter, babbling happily while playing with her favorite toy. Owen had been calculating her custody value while pretending to love her, building evidence against me while I'd been grateful for his support. But we have evidence, too, George said, tone shifting to something more hopeful. All the financial fraud, fake companies, stolen assets. When a judge sees what Owen's been doing, any custody claim becomes irrelevant. If we can prove it before he disappears, I said, we will, George replied with quiet confidence. Elena Rodriguez didn't raise a quitter, and she didn't build this empire so some con artist could steal it from her granddaughter. As I held Lily close and watched George coordinate with lawyers and forensic accountants, I felt something cold and determined settle in my chest. Owen thought he'd won. He thought I was the same overwhelmed new mother he'd been manipulating for months. He was about to discover how wrong he was. Will Patterson's law office felt like a war room. Elena's trusted attorney had assembled a team of specialists, forensic accountants, private investigators, and fraud experts, all working with military precision to document Owen's crimes before he could escape with my family's wealth. Chutbing 1 is our enemy, Will explained as he spread documents across the conference table. Owen's planned this meticulously, but he's made one critical error. He's assumed you're too naive to fight back effectively. I bounced Lily on my knee while scanning financial reports that revealed the true scope of Owen's betrayal. Every number represented years of Elena's hard work. Every fraudulent transfer was a piece of my daughter's future being stolen. "What's our strongest evidence?" I asked. "The fake investment documents," replied Sarah Chen, the forensic accountant Will had brought in. Owen created an entire fictional infrastructure, fake building permits, fabricated investor prospectuses, non-existent development projects. This isn't just theft, it's securities fraud on a massive scale. She showed me side-by-side comparisons of Owen's investment materials and the real Seattle development records. The differences were obvious once you knew what to look for. Wrong. Permit numbers, mismatched addresses, companies that didn't exist in Washington state business registrations. The sophistication actually works against him, Sarah continued. This level of deception required planning, coordination, intent to defraud. It eliminates any possible claim that this was a misunderstanding or poor business judgment. Detective Maria Santos, the financial crimes specialist Will had contacted, leaned forward. "We've traced the money flow through 16 different accounts across 7 countries. Owen's been moving funds systematically, but he's left a digital trail that's impossible to erase." "Can we recover the money?" I asked. "Most of it," Detective Santos replied. "The key is acting before he triggers the final transfers. Based on the pattern, we estimate he's planning to move the remaining accessible funds within the next 12 hours. 12 hours. Owen was at home right now, probably packing his bags while pretending everything was normal. He'd kissed my forehead that morning, told me he loved me, promised to be home for dinner, all while planning to disappear forever with our daughter's inheritance. "What about custody?" I asked, dreading the answer. Will pulled out Owen's divorce filing, its legal language cold and calculating. "He's claiming you're mentally unstable, financially irresponsible, and unable to provide proper care for Lily. He's documented incidents of postpartum depression, times when you've relied on his help with daily tasks, decisions you've delegated because of exhaustion." Reading Owen's version of our marriage was like seeing my life through a funhouse mirror. Every moment of vulnerability I'd shared, every time I'd accepted his help, every sign of normal new mother exhaustion had been twisted into evidence of my unfitness as a parent. "But we have counter-evidence," Will continued, opening another folder. "Owen's text messages with Agatha show him systematically documenting your struggles while simultaneously causing them. He increased your stress by creating financial complexity, then used your resulting exhaustion as proof you couldn't handle responsibilities. The manipulation was breathtaking in its cruelty. Owen had been deliberately overwhelming me with decisions and information, then documenting my confusion as evidence of incompetence. "There's more," Detective Santos added. "Owen's been slowly poisoning your reputation in preparation for the custody battle. He's told colleagues you've been struggling with mental health issues, suggested to your friends that you're having trouble bonding with the baby, even planted seeds with Lily's pediatrician about your emotional stability." I thought about recent conversations, how Dr. Miller had asked unusually probing questions about my mental state, how Felicia had seemed concerned about my well-being, how even my own mother had called last week to check if I was holding up. Okay. Owen had been systematically undermining my credibility while appearing to be the devoted, concerned husband. The good news, Will said, is that Owen's criminal activity completely destroys his custody claim. No judge will award a child to someone facing federal fraud charges. "What's our timeline?" I asked. Sarah Chen consulted her tablet. "We need to file emergency motions by tomorrow morning to freeze all remaining accounts. The criminal complaint needs to be ready by tomorrow afternoon, and we need to execute search warrants before Owen realizes what's happening." "How do we do all that without alerting him?" "Very carefully," Will replied. "Owen thinks he's successfully manipulated you into compliance. We need to maintain that illusion until every legal mechanism is in place." Detective Santos smiled grimly. "We've been monitoring Owen's communications. He's scheduled to leave for the airport tomorrow afternoon, flying to Seattle where Agatha is waiting. He thinks he's won." I looked down at Lily, who was playing with the pearl necklace Elena had given me. My grandmother's voice seemed to whisper in my ear. Never let a man control what your family built. What do you need me to do? I asked. Act normal, Will instructed. Go home, have dinner with Owen. Pretend you're still the trusting wife he thinks he's deceived. Meanwhile, we'll be working through the night to ensure that when Owen tries to board that plane, he'll find his accounts frozen, his assets seized, and federal agents waiting for him. And Lily? Will be safe with her mother, where she belongs, Will said firmly. Owen's not taking your daughter anywhere. As I drove home with Lily sleeping in her car seat, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Control. For the first time since discovering Owen's betrayal, I wasn't reacting to his moves. I was making my own. Owen thought he was playing chess against an amateur. Tomorrow, he would discover he'd been playing against Elena Rodriguez's granddaughter, and she'd inherited more than just money. She'd inherited the will to fight. That final evening with Owen was the hardest performance of my life. I had to sit across from him at our kitchen table, sharing takeout Chinese food while he casually discussed our travel plans for the next day, knowing that he was planning to abandon our daughter and disappear with millions of dollars stolen from her inheritance. I'm excited about Seattle, Owen said, twirling lo mein around his chopsticks with the enthusiasm of someone anticipating a vacation rather than committing federal crimes. The opportunities there are going to change everything for our family's future. Our family's future. The casual lie made my stomach turn, but I managed to smile and nod appropriately while internally rehearsing the timeline Will Patterson had given me. In 12 hours, federal agents would be executing search warrants. In 14 hours, all of Owen's accounts would be frozen. In 16 hours, he'd be under arrest. What time is our flight? I asked, playing my role as the trusting wife. 11:30, Owen replied. We should leave for the airport around 9 to allow time for security with Lily. He was still pretending this was a family trip, still maintaining the fiction that I was willingly participating in his escape plan. The audacity was breathtaking. I packed most of our things, Owen continued, gesturing toward the hallway where I'd noticed several suitcases earlier. Just essentials for the first few weeks. We can buy whatever else we need once we're settled. Just essentials. I wondered if Owen's essentials included the fake passport Detective Santos had discovered he'd commissioned, or the offshore bank account numbers Will's team had traced to the Cayman Islands. My phone buzzed with a text from Will. Everything in motion. Maintain normal behavior until 6 a.m. Then bring Lily to our office. I deleted the message immediately, smiling at Owen as if it had been something routine. My mom, checking on Lily, I lied smoothly. Your mom's going to miss us, Owen said with what seemed like genuine emotion. But she'll understand once she sees how well we're doing in Seattle. Maybe she can visit for Christmas. Christmas. Owen was planning that far ahead, spinning fantasies about a future where he'd successfully stolen my inheritance and convinced me to start over with him as if none of his betrayal had happened. I should probably call her tomorrow before we leave, I said. Let her know we arrived safely. Good idea, Owen agreed. Though we should probably wait until we're settled to give too many details about our new address. You know how she worries. The suggestion that we'd need to keep our location secret should have been another red flag, but Owen delivered it with such casual logic that anyone listening would have thought he was being thoughtfully protective rather than covering his tracks for criminal activity. After dinner, Owen insisted on giving Lily her bath, approaching the routine with unusual tenderness. Watching him soap her tiny body while singing softly in Spanish, I almost forgot that this man had been systematically destroying our lives for over a year. She's going to love Seattle, Owen said, lifting Lily from the bathwater and wrapping her in a fluffy towel. All that clean air, the mountains, the opportunities we're going to give her. The opportunities. Owen still believed he was going to successfully kidnap my daughter and raise her on money stolen from her own inheritance. The delusion was so complete, so divorced from reality, that I almost felt sorry for him. "Owen," I said carefully, "are you sure about all this? Moving across the country with a baby, starting over completely?" For just a moment, his expression flickered with something that might have been doubt. Then he smiled, the charming, confident expression I'd fallen in love with years earlier. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said, kissing Lily's forehead. "We're going to build something amazing together, Simone. Something Elena would be proud of." Elena would be proud. The casual invocation of my grandmother's memory, using her name to justify stealing everything she'd built, was the final insult. Owen had no idea that Elena's legacy included more than just money. It included the strength to fight for what mattered, the wisdom to recognize deception, and the determination to protect future generations. As I tucked Lily into her crib that night, whispering promises that her father would never succeed in taking her away from me, I felt an odd sense of peace. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, legal battles, and probably years of complexity as we unwound Owen's fraud. But tonight, for the last time, I could hold my daughter in the home Elena had given us, surrounded by the security my grandmother had built, knowing that justice was finally coming. Owen thought he was hours away from his perfect escape. He had no idea he was hours away from discovering that he'd tried to steal from the wrong family. At exactly 6 a.m., my phone rang with the call I'd been waiting for. Will Patterson's voice was calm but triumphant. "It's done. Every account frozen, every asset secured, every escape route blocked." I was sitting in my car outside Will's office building, Lily sleeping peacefully in her car seat, watching the sunrise paint Chicago's skyline gold. Inside our Lincoln Park brownstone, Owen was probably just waking up, reaching for his phone to check flight times, completely unaware that his world had collapsed while he slept. The federal judge signed the emergency orders at 5:30 a.m., Will continued. Owen's checking account, savings, investment accounts, even his corporate credit cards, all frozen. The fake companies he's been using to hide assets have been seized. The offshore accounts are being investigated by international banking authorities. What about the properties he sold? Emergency injunctions filed in each jurisdiction. The sales are being reversed as fraudulent transactions. Elena's buildings will be returned to the trust within 60 days. I closed my eyes, feeling Elena's presence like a warm hand on my shoulder. Her life's work was safe. Her granddaughter's inheritance was protected. Justice was finally coming for the man who'd tried to steal from the Rodriguez family. Detective Santos is coordinating with airport security, Will added. The moment Owen tries to check in for his flight, he'll be arrested on federal fraud charges. Agatha Morrison is being arrested simultaneously in Seattle. At 8:15 a.m., I received the first sign that Owen was discovering his new reality. My phone buzzed with a text. "Having trouble with bank app. Can you check our accounts?" I stared at the message, imagining Owen's confusion as every login attempt returned error messages. Every customer service call went to hold music. Every attempt to access his carefully stolen millions hit digital walls. I didn't respond to the trust. Instead, I waited. At 8:47 a.m., "Simone, something's wrong with the bank. They're saying our accounts are frozen. There must be some mistake." At 9:23 a.m., "Where are you? We need to leave for the airport. Call me immediately." At 9:51 a.m., "This isn't funny, Simone. We're going to miss our flight. Lily needs to be here now." I could practically feel Owen's panic radiating through the increasingly frantic messages. The careful, calculated man who'd been systematically stealing my inheritance for 18 months was finally realizing that his victim had fought back. At 10:30 a.m., Will called again. "Owen just arrived at O'Hare. Airport security reports he's extremely agitated, demanding to speak with airline managers about why his credit cards aren't working." And Agatha? In federal custody in Seattle. She attempted to board an international flight to Switzerland this morning. Apparently, she had a briefcase containing financial documents that should make prosecution very straightforward. I imagined Owen standing in the airport, probably calling Agatha's phone over and over, getting nothing but voicemail because his partner in crime was sitting in a detention cell 3,000 miles away. At 11:15 a.m., 15 minutes before their scheduled departure, my phone rang. Owen's contact photo appeared on my screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again, and again. Finally, I answered. Simone. Owen's voice was desperate, panicked. Thank God. Where are you? Something terrible has happened. Our accounts are frozen, my credit cards aren't working, Agatha isn't answering her phone. I think we're victims of some kind of identity theft. Identity theft. Even now, even with his entire scheme collapsing around him, Owen was trying to maintain the fiction that he was innocent, that we were both victims of circumstances beyond his control. That sounds awful, I said calmly, bouncing Lily on my knee while she babbled happily at a colorful toy. Have you called the police? Yes, I'm going to. But first I need you and Lily here. We can figure this out together. Maybe we should postpone the trip until we get this sorted out. Postpone the trip? Owen was still pretending this was a family vacation gone wrong rather than a kidnapping attempt that had been thwarted by federal authorities. Actually, Owen, I said, my voice steady and clear, I think you're going to be busy with other things today. There was a long pause. Then Owen's voice, suddenly cold and calculating. What did you do, Simone? I protected my daughter, I replied, and my grandmother's legacy, and myself. You have no idea what you've... The line went dead. Through Will Patterson, I later learned that Owen had been arrested at 11:42 a.m., just as boarding began for Flight 447 to Seattle. Airport security reported that he'd been attempting to argue his way onto the plane without proper payment when federal agents approached him. He'd tried to run. Owen Matthews, the sophisticated architect who'd spent 18 months systematically stealing millions of dollars from his wife and daughter, had tried to sprint through O'Hare International Airport like a common criminal. He'd made it approximately 50 feet before being tackled by airport security. At 12:30 p.m., Detective Santos called with the final update. Owen Matthews is in federal custody, charged with wire fraud, money laundering, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. Given the amount of money involved and the international scope of the operation, he's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. I hung up the phone and looked at Lily, who was reaching for Elena's pearl necklace around my neck. Your daddy made some very bad choices, baby girl, I whispered to her. But you're safe now. And everything your great-grandmother built for our family is safe too. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. The nightmare was over, and Elena Rodriguez's granddaughter had proven that some legacies are worth fighting for. The federal courthouse in downtown Chicago felt appropriately imposing as I walked through its marble hallways, carrying Lily in her car seat, while Owen sat in a detention cell somewhere in the building's basement. After 3 days of legal proceedings, plea negotiations, and asset recovery hearings, we were finally face-to-face for the first time since his arrest. The meeting took place in a sterile conference room under federal supervision. Owen looked haggard, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit replaced by an orange detention uniform. When I entered with Lily, his face crumpled with what might have been genuine emotion. Simone, he said, his voice breaking. Thank God you're here. This is all a misunderstanding. You have to tell them... I have to tell them what, Owen? I interrupted, settling into the chair across from him with Lily on my lap. That you didn't steal $4 million from your wife and daughter? That you didn't create fake investment companies? That you weren't planning to disappear to Seattle with your mistress? Owen's expression shifted, the mask of innocent confusion slipping, to reveal something harder underneath. You destroyed our family, he said quietly. We could have worked this out privately. Now Lily's father is going to prison because of your vindictiveness. Lily's father put himself in prison when he decided to steal her inheritance, I replied calmly. You made every choice that led to this moment, Owen. Every single one. I was building something for us, he insisted, leaning forward with desperate intensity. The Seattle opportunities were real. Agatha and I were creating generational wealth that would have set Lily up for life. Even now, facing federal fraud, charges and 20 years in prison, Owen was maintaining the fiction that his crime spree had been motivated by family devotion rather than pure greed. Let me tell you what was real, I said, pulling out the forensic accounting report Will Patterson had prepared. You stole $4.2 million. You sold 3 of Elena's properties to shell companies you controlled. You diverted rental income to offshore accounts for 18 months. You created fake investment documents to justify stealing money from your wife's trust fund. Simone, you documented my postpartum struggles to build a custody case while simultaneously causing those struggles through financial manipulation. You planned to take my daughter away from me and raise her on money stolen from her own inheritance. Owen's facade finally cracked completely. You were weak, he said, his voice cold and bitter, overwhelmed, exhausted, incapable of managing Elena's legacy properly. That money was wasted on you. I could have turned it into something magnificent. There was the truth Owen had been hiding behind 18 months of manipulation and fake concern. He'd never seen me as a partner or Elena's money as our family's security. He'd seen us both as obstacles to his own ambitions. Elena built that legacy for her family, I said quietly, not for some con artist who married into it. I earned it, Owen snapped. 2 years of marriage to a grieving daughter, dealing with your depression, your incompetence, your grandmother's paranoid restrictions. I earned every dollar. Earned it. Owen genuinely believed that tolerating my grief, my new mother exhaustion, and Elena's protective financial structures entitled him to steal everything my grandmother had worked 40 years to build. The federal prosecutor says you're looking at 15 to 20 years, I said. Agatha's already agreed to testify against you in exchange for a reduced sentence. Owen's face went white. She wouldn't. She gave them everything, Owen. Financial records, communications, documentation of the entire conspiracy. Apparently, loyalty wasn't part of your business partnership. Detective Santos had told me that Agatha's cooperation had been immediate and complete. Faced with decades in federal prison, Owen's partner in crime had provided evidence that would ensure his conviction while minimizing her own sentence. You could have been somebody, Owen said finally, his voice filled with contempt. With my vision and Elena's resources, we could have built an empire. Instead, you chose to be small, scared, ordinary. I looked down at Lily, who was playing with Elena's pearl necklace, completely oblivious to her father's bitterness. I chose to protect what Elena built, I said. I chose to be worthy of her legacy, and I chose to make sure my daughter never has to wonder if the people who claim to love her are actually planning to rob her. Owen stared at me with the expression of someone seeing a stranger. You're not the woman I married. No, I agreed, standing up with Lily in my arms. I'm stronger than the woman you married. I'm Elena Rodriguez's granddaughter, and you never should have tried to steal from my family. As federal marshals escorted Owen back to his cell, I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Chicago afternoon, carrying my daughter toward a future that was finally secure. Owen had been wrong about everything, but especially this. I wasn't small, scared, or ordinary. I was exactly who Elena had raised me to be. 6 months after Owen's conviction, I stood in Elena's former office, now my office, watching Lily take her first wobbly steps across the hardwood floor. The room had been transformed from a shrine to my grandmother's memory into a working space that honored her legacy while embracing our family's future. The financial recovery had been more complete than anyone expected. Will Patterson's team had recovered $4.1 million of the stolen funds, traced through dozens of shell companies and offshore accounts. The 3 properties Owen had fraudulently sold were returned to the trust, along with substantial damages from the fake buyers. Most importantly, the rental income streams had been restored and were now generating even more revenue than before Elena's death. "Mrs. Rodriguez-Matthews," my new assistant called from the doorway, "George Brennan is here for your monthly review." I'd reclaimed my maiden name legally, wanting Lily to grow up understanding that she was part of the Rodriguez legacy, not the Matthews deception. Owen was serving 18 years in federal prison, his appeals exhausted, his story a cautionary tale about the consequences of stealing from the wrong family. "George," I said warmly, as Elena's longtime advisor entered with his familiar briefcase. "How are we looking this month?" "Better than ever," he replied with a proud smile. "The new property management system you implemented has increased efficiency by 30%. The college scholarship fund you established in Elena's name has already helped 12 students from immigrant families. And the expansion into sustainable housing development is ahead of projections. Those were my contributions to Elena's empire, modernizing operations while maintaining her values, growing the business while honoring her commitment to helping others achieve the American dream." "And personally?" George asked, watching Lily attempt to climb onto my lap. "Stronger every day," I replied honestly. "Some mornings I still can't believe Owen tried to steal everything Elena built. But then I remember that surviving his betrayal proved I'm worthy of her legacy." The transformation hadn't been easy. Therapy had helped me process the trauma of discovering that the man I'd loved and trusted had been systematically destroying my life. Single motherhood presented daily challenges that marriage, even a fraudulent one, had helped mitigate. But every obstacle overcome made me more confident in my ability to protect what mattered most. "Elena would be proud," George said, gathering his papers as Lily finally succeeded in climbing onto my lap. "You've proven that the Rodriguez strength didn't die with her." After George left, I sat holding Lily while she babbled happily, playing with the pearl necklace that had become her favorite toy. Through the window, I could see the Chicago skyline my grandmother had helped build, property by property, investment by investment, dream by dream. "Your great-grandmother was an amazing woman," I told Lily, bouncing her gently. "She came to this country with nothing and built an empire. She taught me that some things are worth fighting for, that family legacies matter, that trust should be earned rather than assumed." Lily reached up to touch my face with her tiny hand, her blue eyes serious and intelligent. She would grow up knowing her worth, understanding her strength, prepared to protect what the Rodriguez women had built for future generations. My phone buzzed with a text from Felicia. "Coffee tomorrow? Corey wants to hear more about your nonprofit." "Expansion plans." I smiled, grateful for friends who had supported me through the darkest period of my life. The isolation Owen had tried to create around me had been replaced by a network of people who genuinely cared about my success. As evening settled over Lincoln Park, I carried Lily upstairs to the nursery Elena had helped design, past the photographs of 4 generations of Rodriguez women who had refused to let anyone diminish their power. "Sleep well, baby girl," I whispered, placing her gently in the crib. "Tomorrow we continue building on everything your great-grandmother started." Standing in the doorway of our secure home, surrounded by the wealth Elena had created and I had protected, I felt the deep satisfaction that comes from winning a battle you never wanted to fight. Owen had tried to make me a victim. Instead, he'd made me a warrior, and Elena Rodriguez's legacy was stronger than ever. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.